Om Tava Kathamritam Tapta Jeevanam Kavibiridhitam Kalmashapaham Shravanamangalam Srimadaatatam Bhuvigananti ye Bhurida Janaha. So today we will be discussing the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. Last Sunday it was Sri Ramakrishna, the great master. So now we will be doing these classes alternately. Gospel on one Sunday and Great Master on the alternate Sunday. Yesterday, of course, we had a special class on the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, which was held in Edinburgh, because I conduct once in a month a special class for the Scotland devotees, and I used to do it online on Mondays. But because I travel to Newcastle the last weekend of every month on Friday, Saturday I take that gospel class live. So yesterday the topic was the importance of prayer and japa in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. What did Sri Ramakrishna tell in the Gospel regarding these two means of sadhana? How meditation and japa, or japa and meditation, form one of the important aspects of sadhana as taught in the Ramakrishna tradition, especially Sri Ramakrishna and Holy Mother. And as I said, if you read the complete works of Swami Vivekananda, there is more emphasis, he gives more emphasis on the 4 yogas, no doubt, but you won't get specific advice for prayer, meditation. In fact, it's not japa and meditation, it's japa and prayer, because according to many traditions, the idea of japa has come from the idea of prayer in all the different religious traditions. Prayer is a long phrase. Japa is a cryptic phrase, slightly smaller than prayer, but the goal of both prayer and japa is the same. Prayer, ceaseless prayer, as it is practiced in some traditions of Christianity, especially the Russian Orthodox Church, the Greek Orthodox Church, they believe in a sort of constant prayer, repetitive prayer, because anything that is repetitive has an impact on our personality, not only the mind but the entire psyche. That's the idea behind the japa. Japa, of course, is something that has come down from different traditions in India which believe in prayer. Like we have a Gayatri mantra as a prayer. It has a specific meaning. It's part of the Vedas, Shruti, and it's a prayer which has a specific meaning. We pray to the sun god, sun god, or maybe the sun himself, in a symbolic way, praying for buddhi or dhi, the enlightenment which comes as a result of removal of ignorance. So basically, Gayatri mantra is the first universal prayer which had to be repeated in the Indian tradition again and again. So it was a kind of japa, but it is japa of a long mantra, a Vedic mantra. But then these long mantras or phrases which have a meaning associated with it, it's not that it's just some bija mantra and some sounds or representing some deity, but it is definitely something to do with the enlightenment of, or the awakening of the buddhi, which is a higher dimension of our personality, the higher dimension of the mind. So that awakening through entreaty or through prayer was first discovered, you may say, if you can use that word, by the rishis of the Vedas. So that's why Gayatri Mantra became so important in the Vedas. And as Sri Ramakrishna said, the essence of the Vedas is in the Gayatri, and the essence of the Gayatri is in Om. So these were the great discoveries. How prayer got transformed into the science of mantra or japa has been explained by Sri Ramakrishna, explained by Holy Mother, and also other monks of the Ramakrishna tradition. Of course, Swami Vivekananda, if you see the complete works, because we don't have a record of all that he said, because it is said that he had initiated a lot of people in the West. Maybe he had given the Pranava mantra, or maybe he had given some Bija mantra as well. We do not know, because he never used to discuss that. So we assume that he definitely would have given some kind of spiritual practice. Otherwise, it would not have become a tradition in the Ramakrishna order. It's not that Holy Mother, Swami Brahmananda, and of course Sri Ramakrishna himself, they started this tradition of japa. Swamiji also would have done it, but because the Western world, especially his main, all the messages that he delivered, the 4 yogas, they were delivered in the West, who would obviously not be so much interested in this type of sadhana, which is a typically, you may say, Eastern way of Eastern way of sadhana. So that's why the Eastern Orthodox Church, as soon as Christianity and other Semitic religions, when they traveled towards the East, maybe they got modified. Even in the Islamic tradition you have, and the Sufi tradition, you have the rosary. So also, if you see the Eastern Orthodox Church, where they did not have this idea of beads like we have, beads tied through which a thread is passed. We do not have that kind of rosary, but there was a rosary, very ancient type of rosary, where knots were tied on a slightly thick thread, and these knots served the purpose of beads. So they have their own tradition, and they have their own way of counting the number of times that you pray. It is a ceaseless prayer. Of course, in some traditions you just don't count. You just repeat the prayer, entreating the Lord whom you believe in to have mercy upon you. That's a very common prayer. So the meaning and the symbolic meaning of all the mantras, according to the Hindu tradition, is the removal of ignorance. Our true nature is revealed only if the layer of ignorance that is covering our true nature, it's not something that we have to discover. Our true nature is already there. We don't have to reach it, or we don't have to consider it as a goal. The goal is to remove the ignorance. And as soon as the layers of ignorance are removed from our personality, truth reveals itself, the spirit reveals itself, God reveals himself, or the reality is flashed in our conscious, or maybe the consciousness, the pure consciousness alone remains, and we identify with that. That's the goal of all sadhana. Now, one of the reasons why the chapter that we are going to discuss, Sri Ramakrishna mentions not only this sadhana, but the need for some people to struggle very hard to reach that divinity. And he also speaks of another class of people who by birth are Nitya Siddhas, or perhaps they are in their last birth. They exhibit a different kind of characteristic. So people misunderstand when they see these Nitya Siddhas, they try to imitate these Nitya Siddhas. That is why Swami Vivekananda had told many of his disciples, he said, don't imitate me. He expected people to follow him, but not just imitate him, because he belonged to a special category of Nitya Siddhas, which Sri Ramakrishna mentioned many times in the Gospel. He is discussing that. So in our previous Gospel class, we saw Sri Ramakrishna is speaking of that Homa bird, and it says that the bird lays its eggs when it is in flight, and as the egg falls to the ground and it's about to strike the ground and get the chick is the young one of the Homa bird is about to be crushed through the force of gravity. It is coming down, but somehow instinctively the young one who is inside the egg realizes that I'm going to be crushed, and instinctively it starts flying. The egg breaks, and the chick which is falling down, before it is crushed, somehow it learns to flap its wings and then take an upward flight. So it comes very instinctively, very naturally to that young bird, this idea of taking flight. Nobody has taught. So comparing them with these Nitya Siddhas, Swami Sri Ramakrishna is explaining to Vijay Krishna Goswami that there are some people who are Nitya Siddhas, or maybe who are in their last birth, or those Nitya Siddhas, or you may say Antarangas or Ishwar Kotis. These are the different words used in different traditions in India. Ishwar Kotis means those who come with the avatara, with Ishwara himself. They have no other goal in life but to help in the divine play. They don't have to struggle like other souls because they are already Nitya Siddhas, they are realized people. But then they come with a specific mission to impart that spirituality to ordinary people. So they should not be, Sri Ramakrishna is giving a warning that they are a special category of people and they have attained to the state or the level of spirituality that is right from childhood. They're born with that, like Shukadeva. So he says one cannot possibly imitate them. And one of the reasons he says they are born like that is that they have been doing sadhana over several previous births. And they come with that, as Sri Krishna explains in the Bhagavad Gita, that not a single effort will be lost. When Arjuna asks him the question, that suppose I don't realize, I do a lot of sadhana and the body falls off, what will happen? Will everything be lost? Just as we gather a lot of money and material wealth and name, fame, but everything ends. We can't carry all those things to our next birth. Many people perhaps would wish that they would continue from where they left. Then the hoarded wealth and the hoarded things that they have gathered, unfortunately, it does not follow. Whereas spiritual practices, because it is subtle, whatever you do, the sukshma sharira or the subtle body does continue, and with that beginning, the jiva in the next birth continues from where it had left. So that is the importance of spiritual practice. Whatever you gain by way of spiritual practice is never lost. And that is how these Nitya Siddhas are explained. That they've been doing sadhana, accumulated over many, many lives. And when they come, and when they are in their last birth, for example, Mahapurush Maharaj, Swami Shivanandaji was also in Ishwar Koti. Though he was not considered to be, Ishwar Kotis were Swami Vivekananda, Swami Premananda, Swami Yogananda, and Swami Niranjanananda. Sri Ramakrishna, for some reason, among all the other disciples, considered these four to be Ishwar Kotis. But Mahapurush Maharaj, who was the second president of the Ramakrishna order, was also a direct disciple. There were many other direct disciples. He once mentioned that this is not only my last birth, but by the grace of Sri Ramakrishna, he has made me into and he has converted me into an Ishwar Koti. What did he mean? That means every time the incarnation comes, he comes with these Nitya Siddhas or these Ishwara Kotis. They belong to a separate category. So that is why Sri Ramakrishna is giving this example of this Homa bird. So they are not like ordinary birds. They have a divine birth. And instinctively they start flying. Nobody teaches them to fly. So those who accompany an incarnation of God are either Nitya Siddhas. They may not be Ishwar Kotis. Some of the Nitya Siddhas may prefer to remain in deep samadhi, as Swami Vivekananda also, you see, Sri Ramakrishna had to coerce him, force him to come down. He was among the 7 Saptarshis, they say. And Sri Ramakrishna goes in the form of a child and says, no, you have to come and help me fulfill the purpose for which I am going to incarnate. So avatars can choose. Not all Nitya Siddhas will become Ishwar Kotis, but definitely Ishwar Kotis are Nitya Siddhas. So he's telling Vijay now, the conversation continues after giving this example of this bird. Maybe it is a mythical bird. We do not know in reality if such birds are really existing, but Sri Ramakrishna gives this example and then tells Vijay, you people, you means referring to him and other people who were in the household. He says, you people have both yoga and bhoga, spiritual inclination and worldly enjoyment. Not that he is belittling them, but he is speaking his mind out. As Jesus said, you can't have God and Mammon at the same time. So not in a belittling way, he's not belittling them, but he says, don't compare yourself with these Nitya Siddhas. You can't, your purpose is to work hard. First, finish the little bit of enjoyment that is remaining. You cannot just leave the world. But at the same time, you have spiritual aspirations, which you have to hold on to. And then he gives another example, very tricky example of Janaka, who was of course a realized soul, but apparently he had both yoga and bhoga. So he says King Janaka had both yoga and bhoga. Thus he was a Rajarshi, both a king and a sage. Rajarshi means, Raja means king, Rishi means a saintly person or a spiritual person. It's very rare that one is both a Raja and a Rishi. Narada was a Devarshi. Devarshi means he has the qualities of Deva and also a Rishi. You see why Sri Ramakrishna is giving this example. Are not Devas higher than Rishis? No. Devas are celestial beings who have intense desire. They have desire to enjoy some kind of power, but by their force of their spiritual practices, they have not chosen the path of mukti, but they have become these divine beings, people with special powers. These are devas. No doubt they are enlightened in that sense that they are far superior than ordinary human beings, but definitely not superior than rishis. Rishis are spiritually evolved people. So just as we have a Raja and Rishi, Raja plus Rishi is Rajarshi, Sri Ramakrishna says there are Devarshis, like Narada, for example. Narada was a divine personality, but at the same time, he was not just a Rishi. He was a celestial being or a Deva with some kind of powers and with some desire. Of course, the desire was to spread bhakti, to spread the glory of Vishnu. That's a different matter. But still, they had both. They had the qualities of a Deva as well as Rishi. Deva literally means one that shines. Shines means who do better than ordinary human beings. But even these Devas, they say, have to be born as a human being and then undergo the sadhana and then become a rishi and then get mukti. So to be a deva is not a very honorable thing according to going to Swarga or becoming a deva. So they are definitely far superior than they have, since they have better equipped, they are having more powers, extraordinary powers, like very talented people. You can't say everybody is equal. Some people are more talented than others. And as Sri Ramakrishna says, and also the Gita says, wherever there is greatness of any kind, physical, mental, Sri Ramakrishna is to respect them, because there is that divinity shining a little bit more than other people. Otherwise, why will they be extraordinary? When he went to see Keshav Sen and Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar, Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar was trying to be very humble. He said, "What is special?" He said, no, you are special. Others are mere pools, you are just a sagar. You are a real sagar of knowledge. What he meant was that you are a exceptionally qualified person. You're not like ordinary people or like ordinary person, human being who has limitations. You're a bit more talented than these people. And as Sri Krishna mentions in the Vibhuti Yoga, wherever you see a glory, a special talent, a special capacity, it need not be a spiritual capacity, it can be a worldly capacity. If there is something special, then there is a little bit anshas. So Sri Krishna says that my glory is reflected a little bit more in such people. So naturally, the respect is due. So Devarshis are who, like Narada was a Devarshi, while Sukadeva was a Brahmarshi, a sage who had attained Brahman. So he was a real Rishi, a Brahmarshi. So that is why this category of different types of Rishis. Rajarshi, Janaka, who was a king and at the same time spiritually inclined. A Rishi, combining his Rishihood with king, the qualities of a king. Slightly higher, perhaps, is a Devarshi like Narada. But Shukadeva had no such desire. He had no taint of the world at all. That's why he is known as Brahmarshi. So these are the different grades, Sri Ramakrishna, according to our scriptures. Shukadeva was a Brahmarshi. Sri Ramakrishna is continuing. He was not a Jnani. He was the very manifestation of Jnana. That is what Brahmarshis are. That is the stuff that Brahmarshis are made of. They are full of Jnana. There is absolutely no ignorance. Whereas the others, the Brahmarshis and Devarshis, have certain qualities which do not make them a Brahmarshi, complete Rishi. He is not only a person who has Jnana, like Janaka. Janaka had both Jnana as well as Yoga as well as Bhoga, a little bit of both. Whereas Shukadeva was pure Jnana. That's what Sri Ramakrishna is saying. Through the practice of constant spiritual practices, through religious disciplines, he attained Purna Jnana, that is spiritual wisdom. And he attained to that, he was the very embodiment of Jnana. That is why his father, Vyasa, he was Vyasa's son. Vyasa was a rishi, but obviously Shukadeva was born perfect. He was considered to be far superior. There was no flaw in him. Even his father was a householder, whereas Shukadeva was right from beginning was a full Purna Jnani, complete. That is what Sri Ramakrishna. And he says he was a storehouse of Jnana. He did not acquire Jnana, he was born with that Jnana. That is why they say that he did not want to be born. He said, what's the fun in being born again? And he was born very late. He had grown up before he was born. That is how the story goes. Because he saw that I don't want to enter into this world of Maya. He was completely full of Jnana. And he was a storehouse of Jnana. And Sri Ramakrishna says he became a jnani effortlessly, not by the practice of spiritual disciplines. Like this Homa bird, the young one, the chick, the bird, as soon as the egg is hatched, it starts flying. The mother doesn't have to teach it how to fly. With normal birds, the mother has to show. Sometimes the mother has to push the young one out of the nest so that it learns flying, learns how to fly. That's the case with ordinary birds. But this Homa bird, the example that is given is that they learn instinctively, even as the egg is hatched and is about to fall on the ground, it takes flight, and nobody teaches it to fly. So Shukadeva, according to Siram and according to our scriptures and according to the tradition, is a Purna Jnani, and he became a Jnani effortlessly, not by the practice of spiritual. That is the difference between a Nitya Siddha and others who have reached spiritual perfection by constant spiritual practice. So Sri Ramakrishna is now explaining to Vijay Krishna Goswami, you are having a best of both the worlds. But there are people who are born perfect. They don't need this kind of spiritual training. They attain that state. So while talking, after explaining this to Vijay Krishna Goswami, Sri Ramakrishna knew that Vijay Krishna Goswami was a sincere, he belonged to that famous lineage of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that Goswami. These Goswamis were all devotees of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Sanatana Goswami, Rupa Goswami. There are so many Vaishnavas who are ardent followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And he belonged to that lineage. And he had that inclination towards bhakti. But unfortunately, he got associated, like most of the educated people, with Brahmo Samaj. And Brahmo Samaj criticized idolatry. Brahmo Samaj was a strange religion which was a hodgepodge of different ideologies, a little bit of Islam, little bit of Christianity, little bit of Hinduism. They thought that they have to get rid of this superstition known as idolatry, not knowing the true significance and purpose of that, why idols were worshipped, why God was worshipped in an image, and all these things. That ignorance led the founders of Brahmo Samaj, led them to believe that if we take the best elements, that's not how things work. It was like a fusion of different ideas, what they thought were the great ideas of different religions. So Vijay Krishna Goswami was a paid professional preacher, mind you. He was not that was his job. He was appointed by Brahmo Samaj, just as we have secular priests in certain religions who are supposed to perform different duties. And they don't do it as out of a desire to attain spirituality. They do it because they are paid for that. So he was having a conflict, and Sri Ramakrishna understood this, because many times we see, even in this conversation, he says, I wish to do, he was full of devotion, having been born into a family or a lineage which was very deeply devotional in temperament. He could not give that up. At the same time, his profession demanded of him that he should not be worshipping, criticizing all these rituals and other things that were happening as superstitions, condemning. It was a negative way. It was more of a social reform rather than a true spiritual sect. But anyway, that conflict was too deep, and Sri Ramakrishna knew that. So in the gospel you will find he had a lot of sympathy towards Vijay Krishna Goswami. Otherwise, why would he come? Sri Ramakrishna used to worship God in the temples. In fact, the Brahmos refused. Some of the Brahmos were so strict that they would not even associate with anybody who visited temples or any place of worship. They thought it was just superstition. So many of the followers or members had this conflict, internal conflict. But they saw that here is a storehouse of spirituality. Even Keshav Chandra Sen, who used to visit Sri Ramakrishna, not caring what his followers would think about him. He used to come, listen to Sri Ramakrishna singing devotional songs sometimes. So Vijay Krishna Goswami, being totally influenced, not only influenced, but totally fascinated by the wonderful spirituality of Sri Ramakrishna, used to come and with rapt attention listen to whatever he said. And Sri Ramakrishna was very kind to him. He knew the heart of his heart, he is basically a man of great devotion. But outwardly, his job or his profession as a Brahmo preacher made him criticize the very thing that he loved most. That is what happens in most of the professional lives. You have some great, your heart yearns for something, and the mind tells you something else is good. That is why when Vivekananda came to London, in America, he once said, if there is a conflict between the heart and the head, it's better to follow the heart rather than the head, because reason will confuse you. That is exactly Vijay Krishna Goswami's predicament here. He loves to hear devotional songs, but is always afraid that his job as a preacher will be threatened if people complain and he is seen to be in the company of Sri Ramakrishna. He said, how can you associate yourself with these? These are all superstitions, according to them. The fanatic adherents of this Brahmo Samaj, they always thought that it's just a superstition. Singing and then singing kirtans and all, they were against that kind of spiritual practice. But anyway, Sri Ramakrishna is now asking Kedar. Kedar, of course, used to frequent Brahmo Samaj, but of late he is basically a very, very devoted devotee of great, you can say, devotional temperament. And he was a very good singer. So he asks Kedar to sing deliberately. Even Keshav Sen used to hear some of the songs that were being sung in Sri Ramakrishna's room in Dakshineshwar. So he sings a nice song, "Oh friend, how can I tell you what is in my mind?" This is a typical Bengali song. And it is forbidden to speak. I mean, reason cannot be used to explain certain things. The great devotional feeling that is in one's heart, cannot be expressed through words. It becomes trivialized, it becomes superficial if you try to speak of it. It has to be felt. So this song, the import of this song, perhaps it's a great devotee of either Kali or some other. Kedar is singing this song. It is forbidden to speak. I mean, I cannot speak about it. Without a real and sympathetic friend, I cannot survive. The man who can know one's mind only can understand it. Means he is looking for a person of similar temperament. If you go to if a person with full of devotion or full of spiritual inclination goes to a worldly person and tries to speak of the joy of spiritual life, he is not likely to understand it, because he finds his joy in something which is different. So he says, how can I speak to somebody who does not share my same ideas? That's the import of this Bengali song, which says, without a real and sympathetic friend, somebody who empathizes with you, who sympathizes with you, who understands your feelings. Only he can understand or appreciate. And without that, I cannot survive. So that is why Sri Ramakrishna is deliberately singing this song to convey a point to Vijay Krishna Goswami. I know your predicament. You are following a profession against your own wishes. Your heart does not sanction it, but you have to do it because that is how you earn your money. So I know that is the confession. That is the problem in your heart, and you cannot reconcile, and you seek a sympathetic friend who understands your innermost feeling. The man who can know one's mind can understand it. Referring to himself, obviously, Sri Ramakrishna has indirectly told him that is the reason why he comes now and then. Though he was extremely busy, many times he was seen complaining that I wish to come, but my job does not, or my profession doesn't allow me. I have to do certain things for which I am paid. So then he says he is easily recognized. There are only one or two such people. They are speaking of great incarnations, great saints. So it is not very difficult to understand or to find a sympathetic person. That is why they say if we get emotionally attached to somebody who exhibits this love of God, then there is a chance that you can understand, or they can understand your mind, and they can guide you properly. So in a way, he's telling Vijay Krishna Goswami that, and even M, who was also a Brahmo member, he was, as all of you know, he was in a very, very difficult situation. His household was full of quarrels to the extent that he was contemplating suicide. Had he not come to Dakshineshwar on that day, encouraged by his friend, who of course never came back, perhaps just to save him, there was some very good karma which brought M to Sri Ramakrishna. And then he suddenly found that this life is worth living. A person who till the previous day was contemplating suicide and planning to jump into the Ganga, not able to bear the trauma that he faced in his household. There were a lot of problems. There were crazy people. There were many issues in that joint family, where the house where he was staying. And he could not find anybody to sympathize with him. So one of his friends said, why don't we just go to Dakshineshwar and meet Sri Ramakrishna? He perhaps that change of environment basically brought him there because there was a lovely garden. Dakshineshwar was such a beautiful place. Even today it's a nice place. Only it's a bit crowded. Those days it was nice. So he said there is a lovely garden on the bank of the Ganga. That's what most people do. When they visit, they basically go to enjoy some kind of nature, just to escape the humdrum of their professional life. Perhaps his friend, who was very superficial, thought that just this change of place, every day he's becoming anxious and full of tension. He in fact left his house with his wife and stayed with a friend for a few days. But how long can you stay? And then someday or the other, that idea of going back to his own house, where there was so much of turbulence going on, he decided to visit. Just listen to his friend for at least listen to his advice. And just his friend was more interested in the beautiful ambience which Dakshineshwar temple had, beautiful trees, beautiful beautiful flower gardens. He said, maybe your mind will change if you go. But then something else happens. They just happen to meet Sri Ramakrishna, and that transforms M, who later on used to come regularly. So perhaps now this song, which is meant for Vijay Krishna Goswami, is meant for M also. He said one or two such people are there who can really sympathize with your problems, So it's better you go to them. Such a person is filled with bhava. Bhava means a deep spiritual emotion, becomes absorbed in joy, and he comes and goes through the upstream course. Upstream course here means the rise of spiritual sensitivity in the psychic system. It is also known as Kundalini. That is what is referred to here, because basically these songs were sung by Shaktas, who believed that the consciousness, who not only believed but that is part of their philosophy, that the center of consciousness along the spinal cord moves upward. That is why they use the word upstream. Upstream course means Kundalini is a psychic energy, a nervous psychic energy which follows an upward course and doesn't restrict itself to the lower end of the spinal column. It passes through the Sushumna. So that is what they are referring to in this song. And it following an upstream or upward course means that the center of consciousness shifts from purely physical to the heart center, which is supposed to be the fourth center, and then it follows an upward course, and a person becomes more and more spiritually inclined. That is what Shaktas believe. The ordinary people, the Kundalini or the center of consciousness is restricted to the lower three levels. So they are happy with all the joys of the world. But if one gets a little glimpse of that spiritual joy, and to understand that, you have to be in touch. A person filled with bhava. So such people are rare. That is the import of the song. After this song, Kedar sings another song about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He was also known as Gaur. He says, the wave of Gaur's love has touched my body. They say that when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his other followers used to go, even the hard-hearted criminals, Jagai, Madai and others, they were transformed. Even the people with hardened hearts, they got transformed. So he says, the wave of Gaur's love, they were so much full of love. They could convey spirituality by their mere presence. They did not even have to sing. Their very presence changed. That is what is being referred to here. By its thunder in the sense the deeply emotional or the ecstatic love that Gauranga Mahaprabhu had, all the heretics or the evil people, by its thunder, all heretics are crushed and the universe is submerged. I mean, the worldliness is submerged. I feel my mind should remain absorbed in divinity. This is the bhavartha or the implication of this song. The crocodile of intense love of moon like Gaur has swallowed me, oh my friend. That means it's all a symbolic way or a figurative way of explaining that the crocodile, just as it devours its prey, the wonderful love has engulfed me. And finally, the last verse is very important. It says, is there any friend? I mean, a well-wisher, a real friend, who knows my misery, who can drag me out holding my hand. So these are all devotional songs where you send your supplication to an incarnation or a saint or a divine personality, entreating him to rescue you from the meshes or the bondage or the mess that is known as the world. So this song, this is the second song, and perhaps it's resonating with Vijay Krishna Goswami and of course M, who are listening to that. And then he asks him to sing one more. He had a wonderful voice, Kedarnath Chatterjee, who was a wonderful, highly devotional person. Sri Ramakrishna used to praise his devotion and he used to sing with real feeling. So all people around him, including Sri Ramakrishna, used to become ecstatic. Even the hard-hearted, some of those people, M himself says that he was a very unemotional person. because following the synthetic religion or the synthetic philosophy of too many confusing religions is they had become sort of dry. Sri Ramakrishna used to sometimes make fun. You see, he thinks he's a mature person, that's why he can't even laugh. Sri Ramakrishna was childlike, used to laugh, and he said, "Why are you sitting in a corner and just appearing to be so serious?" He says he feels that he cannot even laugh. His heart has been hardened so much that they cannot even enjoy the divine ecstasy. So, he who does not recognize the shortcomings of love, that is another song. So, after these songs are over, Sri Ramakrishna is now speaking to the devotees. Keshav Chandra Sen, his nephew Nandalal was there. He is seated beside Thakur along with two other Brahmo friends. Then Sri Ramakrishna says, when one enjoys a divine mood, one is already intoxicated. One does not have to drink wine. The Charanamrut of Mother intoxicates me exactly as if I had drunk 5 bottles of wine. You remember the famous incident when Girish Chandra Ghosh, who was a confirmed drunkard and used to boast that he had tasted almost all the wine of the world, whatever good spirit was there, he would have had consumed it, and he was always looking for more and more intoxication. So when he sees Sri Ramakrishna once, who was singing and dancing, he felt, oh, this person must have had some wine, because that is what comes to the mind. Whatever you do, you think others are doing the same thing. And Girish Chandra Ghosh goes to of course he was fully drunk, but he's telling his friends what kind of wine this person Sri Ramakrishna has drunk, and Sri Ramakrishna overhears it. He immediately replies, he said, "Can you tell me what brand do you use? Even I don't get intoxicated so much." Then Sri Ramakrishna jokingly says, "I have drunk the wine of Ma Kali's name. Would you like to taste a little bit? It will make you forget all the intoxication that you have experienced so far." So that's what Sri Ramakrishna is saying. The Charanamrut of the mother intoxicate mother's name. It's a figurative way of explaining. Intoxicate me exactly as if I had drunk 5 bottles of wine. So Sri Ramakrishna says, in this deeply devotional mood, one cannot always take every kind of food. You see, there's a difference. When Naren used to come, when Swami Vivekananda used to come, there were no prohibitions because he was a Jnani. But people who are deeply devotional and emotional by nature, Sri Ramakrishna used to impose a lot of restrictions as to the food they take. He said one cannot always take every kind of food. Food has a great impact because that influences our thoughts. There are various kinds of food. Some foods are rajasic, some are tamasic, some are sattvic. So Sri Ramakrishna was very careful, especially when he dealt with people with a devotional or emotional temperament. Whereas with Jnanis, he was not so strict. He would not restrict Swami Vivekananda or others who had a similar temperament, and would allow them to eat anything and everything, almost everything. Whereas with these people, since Vijay Krishna Goswami is there with Kedar, he says, in this state, I mean, when you are deeply devoted, if you just are not careful about what food you eat, then it can harm your spiritual practices. Narendra is there, and he is telling something, he is expressing his own opinion, because that is from his own experience. He has found that food doesn't affect him at all, and that was true. He says, in the matter of drinking and eating, the best is that which chance brings. Now, he was of a monastic temperament. Monks have no choice. When they go for bhiksha, it is said, even the great Buddha, he never used to discriminate. Whatever food was He used to go with a begging bowl and following the monastic rules, whatever was given to him, there was no choice. But that is true for Gyanis. That's why Narendra is saying, in the matter of drinking and eating, the best is that which chance brings. But Sri Ramakrishna is correcting him. He says it's true of a particular state of mind. For a Gyani, nothing is prohibited. According to the Gita, the Gyani really doesn't eat. He just makes an offering to his spiritual power, which is Kundalini. With that spirit, anything can be digested. But Sri Ramakrishna says this does not hold true for a person of devotional temperament. Now my mood is such, in this mood, I can't eat unless I am given prasad or bhoga offered to the deity. Only such food I can accept. I can't take anything and everything from anybody's hand. Anybody bringing food with various kinds of selfish motives, I can't take food. That is true for a bhakta. That's why when certain people, apparently evil-minded people or selfish people who normally brought food to serve some with some worldly desire in mind, people offer these things to the deity. They used to offer, and it is very, very common. If you see in India, they seem to feel that if we bribe the gods, Hanumanji and so many, maybe some of our secular problems will be solved. So idea behind offering is not just devotion, but some kind of return. And that kind of food was prohibited by Sri Ramakrishna. Normally Shraddha food also, because it is meant for a particular purpose, to appease the departed spirit. It's not meant just food which is not offered to God full of love, with a feeling of offering, unselfish offering. That used to be prohibited. Sri Ramakrishna used to say, if things are not offered to the Lord, only the food that is offered to the Lord, after the Lord partakes it, it becomes pure, then I can eat in this state of mind. Formally, he says there are different, I used to eat food offered by everyone. He was in a different state. He was in a state of Gyani or Jnana, where it doesn't really make any difference. But now, because I am in a devotional mood, I have to be very careful what food. He says, though I cannot eat everything, once in a while I do. Once they took me to Keshav Sen's theatre, Nava Brindavan, that is the name of the theatre. I was served luchis and a curry seasoned with dry chilies. I don't know whether it was brought to me by a washerman or a barber. He was just joking. Who brought food to me, I ate it heartily without looking into the purity or impurity of the food. Rakhal at that time warned me. Rakhal was his disciple, Swami Brahmananda. He saw Sri Ramakrishna never ate like this. What has happened to him? So he said, Rakhal asked me not to eat this food. To Narendra, you will succeed now. You are in this as well as in that. You may eat everything now, because he knew his temperament was different. He used to consider everything as a manifestation of Brahman. So for a Jnani, it doesn't really matter, whereas for a Bhakta, it makes a huge difference. So then he says, finally, we'll come to the conclusion now. He's addressing Vijay Krishna Goswami and telling the devotees, blessed is the man who is attracted by the Lord, even though he may eat pork. On the other hand, shame on him who is attracted to lust and greed, even though he may be eating Havishya. So this is a famous quotation of Sri Ramakrishna. It's not just the food that you eat that really matters. What is your character? What is your personality? A person who is devoted to Lord, for him, a person like Narendra, he can eat anything. That will not impact him. But if you are in the beginning of your spiritual life, and you are struggling to shake off your attachment to lust and greed, even if you are eating the purest of food, the purest of pure, Havisha Anna is supposed to be a very pure kind of food physically. So he said, even if you eat Havisha Anna and are attracted to this world, lust and greed, if these things, qualities are there in you, then what's the use? Ritualistic purity doesn't matter much. That is what Sri Ramakrishna seems to be saying. So we will conclude now. If there are some questions, you can ask. Otherwise, we will. So as I told you, the Monday last Saturday of every month, the gospel class, which is meant for Scotland devotees, will be held live in Edinburgh, but it will be as it was. That will not follow this sequence. That will be an independent topic and an independent class, though it is based on the gospel. But this is only on the last Saturday of every month, unless of course I cancel the Scotland trip. So after the Friday talk in Newcastle, which is on Bhagavad Gita, that is a special class once in a month. But otherwise, our Saturday class would be alternately Bhagavad Gita and the Upanishads. And the Upanishads in the sense Vedanta and the science of human resources. And the first and third Saturday, invariably it would be held in Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan in West Kensington. So that also will be on Zoom, available on Zoom. Only the Friday class is a bit, there's some technical problems in Newcastle. The Hindu temple, the signal is always not very good. So last time the quality of the Gita talk was not so good. But if the class is in Bharati Vidya Bhavan or the second Saturday, if it is here, there is no problem. The signal is good, Wi-Fi is good. So hopefully the Zoom people who cannot come here and attend on Zoom will have no problem. But in any case, if we do record the Friday class, Bhagavad Gita, in which we follow a sequence, we are discussing chapter number 2 there. It's conducted by the International Gita Foundation, Newcastle. So that is recorded, and then we will upload it on our YouTube channel. So I'll take your leave now. I don't think there is any question, so I'll take your leave. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.